What are the four truths to leading an uncommon and extraordinary life? Well, there are four truths, and we've gone through the first two in our first ponder with Terry Tucker. We talked about control your mind, or it will control you, and embrace the pain and the difficulty we all experience in life, and use that difficulty to make you stronger and more resilient. In this podcast, we'll go to the third and fourth truths. What you leave behind is what you weave into the hearts of people. And four, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated.
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to another Pondering Life episode of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own interest to help others. And today, it is my wonderful and great pleasure to welcome back Mr. Terry Tucker. Now, Terry combined his 10 years battle with cancer, athletic coaching, and law enforcement background as a foundation for his speaking topics, how to live your uncommon and extraordinary life purpose, and the fourth truths to leading a resilient life. And he's also published the book, Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And this is where we pick up from our previous Pondering Life, which the link will be in the show notes, is we were covering off the four truths. And we've covered the first two truths, and that's in the previous episode. The second two truths is where what you leave behind is what you weave into the hearts of other people. And that's the third truth. And the fourth truth is, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And so welcome back, Terry. And from our discussion, let's continue on.
Well, David, thanks for having me back.
Terry, it's always wonderful chatting to you. We explore so much from that perspective. But when let's do a quick recap. Do you want to just quickly summarize the first two truths, and then we'll move on to the I know I'm putting you on the spot with that because I didn't tell you.
Oh, that's fine. No.
Yeah, pretty sure you know your material.
The first one is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The gist of that is basically, we all talk to ourselves, whether we like to admit it or not. And you need to be very careful of that self-talk, because we all become what we think. So if you're thinking negative, eventually you're going to hardwire your brain so that you can't do whatever that negative thing is you're talking about. Conversely, you get to a point where, I was never good at math. And I am like a classic example of somebody who always psyched myself out in math with, I'm not good in algebra. I'm probably not going to get a good, and that's exactly what your brain doesn't want you to do, because it's like, sure, Terry, you know what? Keep saying that, because eventually we're not going to be good at algebra at all, and I am not good at algebra. So,
well, that's a good point too. I mean, because why learn algebra? You're never going to go there.
Yeah, you don't need it. What the heck? It's like. So it's that first.
I don't even know where that country is. Why do I need to learn it?
Yeah, exactly. It was. So it's always just to be careful of what you say to yourself, and if you're going to talk to yourself in a positive way. So that's the first truth. The second truth is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more determined individual. And the way that works is basically, our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure.
Yeah.
So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are right now, it's comfortable and familiar and should just be left alone. The
Mm,
problem with that is the only way we're going to grow, the only way we're going to get better, the only way we're going to improve is to step outside those comfort zones and do things that make us uncomfortable. And the way what I try to suggest to people, and I try to do this every day of my life, is every day do one thing that makes you uncomfortable, that makes you
mm.
nervous, that scares you, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but if you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, like, we lose somebody who's close to us, we get let go from our job, find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness, you'll be so much more resilient to
Mm.
handle that pain when it presents itself.
I think that point is really, and I love that principle that you've got there, that truth, because I think today we forget how many times that we've failed and then succeeded. If you take it right back to the point of when we were children, you've and I don't know who studies this stuff, but somebody did. Apparently, they studied children and their ability to learn to walk and how long it takes. And apparently, on average, it takes 8,000 tries. So you've tried it on average. If you consider, some people learn quicker, some slower, but on average, you've tried and failed something 8,000 times before you actually succeeded. And this ability to embrace failure, not to say, oh, yeah, I'm a failure, but, to go, okay, I didn't get it that time. I'm going to try again. Um, I think it's really important, and I love that truth to remind people of that it is so important to go. Failure is part of this. It's called. I love the term someone said to me. It's called beginners suck. When you start doing something new, you're going to suck at it. That's just the way it works, and you've got to keep working towards that. So thanks for summarizing those two truths. Now, the other ones that we're talking about, the third one is what you leave behind is what you weave into the hearts of people. Do you want to explain a bit about that one before we get into more detail about that?
Yeah, that to me is kind of a legacy truth.
Mm,
I think it's important for all of us, regardless of what stage of life we're in. Whether we're just starting out, we're middle aged, or we're kind of coming to the end of the road, to sort of think about the end game. What
yeah.
are people going to say about you at your funeral? What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? There was an individual here in the United States by the name of Fred Rogers. He was a television personality, Mr. Rogers, and he did so much to encourage, to foster young people in kind of like what we were talking about before. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be different from other people. And he was a really influential person here in the U.S. On public television, and he educated so many kids, including me, that were growing up. And when Mr. Rogers died in 2003, his family was going through his effects, and they found his wallet. And inside his wallet was a scrap piece of paper on which Mr. Rogers had written four words: life is for service. And
Mm,
so, you look at that, and here's this guy who gave so much of himself to help kids, at a time when a lot of two parent families were both working outside the house. And here was this box, this television. And was it mindless entertainment that these kids were learning, or was it something productive, something about themselves, something about things that scared them? And he was really one of the first people in the United States. He had a character, a police officer, I believe, who was African American, and
mm.
the two of them pretended, it was a hot day in the neighborhood, and they took their shoes off and they stuck their feet in a pool, and they just talked. Well, that wasn't done in the United States when he first started that.
Yeah.
So it was all these things of teaching kids what was appropriate in their lives that they should
Mm.
have been getting from their parents. But in all honesty, they really weren't doing that. And for him, that was all about service.
It's interesting that you say that about service and leaving a legacy. And part of that legacy, it seems to be, from what I can see, and I maybe I'm a poet and didn't know it, but your purpose is service. You know, it seems to be when we're talking about having a people, you know, you find what is your purpose? What is your purpose in life? And whether it's you find it or you choose it, I'm still working through that one as to whether we actually can just go, okay, I choose this to be my purpose and do that, or whether you and whether that works. And there's a whole, we'll talk about that another time, I guess. But this purpose, this point that you're talking about, leaving this legacy, I mean, a legacy is not going to be, you know, how much you did wonderful things for yourself. People aren't really going to remember that, but they are going to remember what you did for others. Is that where you're getting to with that?
I guess the way I look at this is this, and I think part of this is, you know, kind of how we're directed or we're told, and that'll make a little more sense when I explain this. It seems to me that, especially in the West, we seem to think that we are born empty, and that, you know, when we get out of school and we kind of get into life, that our job is to consume. You know, I want to have a good job. I want to have a nice house. I want to drive a nice car. I want to have a great family. I want to have a great education. I want to have everything. And so we consume. And by doing that, we think we're filling ourselves up. And Damien, what I've come to understand, at least for me, is that it's just the opposite. We're not born empty. We're born full. And our job should be to empty ourselves out with our gifts and our talents to, you know, better ourselves, our family, our community, our God, whatever you believe. But that people, you know, hey, it's all about me. I got to get that. And I've seen so many people in my life that, for example, say you and I are friends. And, you know, you get this great job and you're making a ton of money.
Still debating. I'm not sure yet. No.
Well, we are. I think we are. Yeah, we're good.
We're
You're
good.
my friend
We're
down
good. Exactly.
But
we're definitely good.
I look at you and instead of saying, "Hey, Damien, great job. Congratulations. You know, I'm really happy for your success." What do? We get jealous. Hey, I want what Damien has. But that's not
I'd want what I have.
you want. But that's not our road. You know, I mean, I
exactly.
need to stay in my lane because what I'm supposed to do in life, whether, you know, it's something like you say, you choose, or it's something that's predestined for you, I need to find that. Viktor Frankl, you know, the concentration camp survivor during World War II and the author of Man's Search for Meaning, you know, talks about that people should not have this abstract thought of, you know, well, I'm not quite sure. There's a purpose why you're here. And he talks about having a moral obligation to find that purpose and to live it. And if you look at, well, my purpose is I gotta have stuff, then I see so many people that are miserable who have a lot of stuff. But what if you don't need stuff? What if you just, everything you need to be successful is already here? You just need to pour it out for the betterment of yourself, your family, and other people.
That's interesting, and because you say about this stuff, and I was having that conversation with about that, and because from my experience, the stuff side of things I've done in droves. I mean, I've flown to Nice, had a private helicopter take me to Monaco, you know, and you know,
I knew I wanted to hang out with
you, you know, but we were talking about that from that perspective, and I said, while that was fun, and it is fun, there's no doubt about that. If that was all that was in my life, it's not fulfilling. So that helicopter ride is fun, but that helicopter ride is not fulfilling. My life is not fulfilling because I did that helicopter ride. Yes, it's nice to talk about and get a little bit of ego trip and stuff like that because it is cool, but it's not fulfilling. It doesn't go on. Whereas I think I've talked about when I didn't actually have much money, when an Aboriginal man came and asked me for $20 and I gave him that $20 that I had, which I didn't really have to give technically because I didn't have a job. And he got so excited, and I don't know what the flow-on effect was to that. All I saw was him dancing around forever going how excited he was. And that was nearly 30 years ago. And that still makes me feel good. In fact, makes me feel good then when I talk about that helicopter ride. Makes me feel much, much better. And that's where I was just wondering from that perspective. You talked about we're born full. Do we? Because and we empty out, but do we actually empty out? Is the question I'm having. Because as humans, do we not? It's difficult to understand the concept of infinity. I mean, when you look at love, love is not, there is no boundary to that. If you've got children, you've got a wife. If you love your wife, you don't love your children any less. So I'm wondering from that perspective, we are born full, but do we actually empty out? If we do things to help others, does it, I mean, because I said, talking about that experience with that Aboriginal man, and other times I think about where I've given, it hasn't emptied me. It's actually made me fuller, if I was going to put it from that perspective, even though that's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, you're right. And maybe empty it out isn't it is the best choice of words, but I think you understand the point. It's not what you
Yeah, yeah,
get, it's what you
yeah,
give.
yeah.
And it's interesting, and you're right. Do we empty ourselves out? I think a lot of people, the answer would be no.
Mm,
They somehow feel like if you have to hold it close to the vest, and if
mm,
you give it, "Ooh, wait a minute, am I
mm.
am I diminished in some way? Have I lessened whatever?" But you and I have figured out that the more love you give, the bigger that love gets. And I'll tell you a quick story. I had a nurse who, when I first met her, was in the unit where I have cancer, for those who didn't listen to the first two episodes, and I get treated every 3 weeks. And this nurse is about 25 years old. And when I first met her, she was already a nurse, but was in training on the unit. And many months later, she was taking care of me by herself. And she came into my room one day while I was being treated, and she said, "Terry, I have a story I want to tell you, but I'm a little uncomfortable telling it to you." And I didn't really know how to respond to that. I thought, well, okay, let me, I told her, I said, "Look, I hope you tell me the story. It sounds like I would enjoy it, but obviously it's something you've got to decide you want to share or not." And so she's in and out over the next couple hours, and finally comes in, sits down, and said, "All right, here's the story." She said, "When I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I'd had a good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I talked to my parents, and I was going to quit nursing and go to work for Amazon. And then I met you, and I see the ugliness that you go through during your therapy, during your treatment. And then I went back in the file and I read your kind of 10-year, 11-year history with cancer." And she said, "When I finished reading about you, I knew where I was supposed to be." Now, if she had never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had had a positive impact on her in that way. And think about, so we look at ourselves like, "Oh, my life is so bad or so terrible or things are tough," and all that kind of stuff. There are so many people out there that you don't even know that are watching you and saying, "Oh my God, that guy's got unbounded courage. I want what he or she has." But we look at ourselves as, a disappointment, or "I'm just exhausted and I can't make it," and things like that. Whereas other people are saying, "Oh my God, I would give anything I have just to walk 5 minutes in that person's shoes." So I love that story, because we have no idea whose life we touch, even if we're not trying to physically empty ourselves out to make a difference in the world. You have no idea who you're touching out there.
It's fascinating from that perspective that we really just don't know. I mean, when you look at the butterfly effect, use that as an analogy, you seriously don't know. A friend told me a long, long time ago that if a miracle happens within 200 miles of where you are, claim responsibility. You just don't know what effect that you might have had to lead to that. It's, and it's not walking around, with an arrogant ego going, "I did that." But it's like just quietly. It's that quiet, and maybe that's part of too where we need to make that distinction between ego, because sometimes people think ego is a bad thing, but like anything, I mean, an unhealthy body is not good for you. A healthy body is good for you, and a healthy ego, where you actually like yourself, love yourself. That's a good thing to love yourself. But this, what you're talking about here of creating this legacy of, what you leave behind is what you weave in people's hearts. And from that perspective, because something someone said to me, and I was said much later in life, I wish I understood this ages ago because I was always trying to explain things to people based on facts and, this is the situation. And then someone said to me, people don't remember what you say so much. They remember how you make them feel. And for me, that was a very big eye opener. And because how you approach things and how you deal with how you make people feel, you can say, and I remember the scene, I mean, you probably remember as well from Three Men and a Baby, where they're reading the book and it's like this ridiculous thing. It's like, it doesn't matter what you read, it's just how you say it. And maybe I should have picked up from there. But is that part of that, this legacy of what you weave into people's hearts? It's how you make them feel and having that focus of how are we making other people feel. There's a line there I think we need to draw between other people going, I'm offended, which is a different thing. We can get to that in a minute. But is that part of what you're saying? Is do actions in a way that help people feel better about themselves?
Yeah, I mean, to what extent you can. I remember when I was one of the jobs I had in my life is I was a police officer, and part of that was I was a SWAT team hostage negotiator. And I remember there was this formula that we kind of looked at in terms of getting your message across. And I'm going to try to remember. I think it was 7-38-55. So if you're trying to deliver a message, 7% of that message, excuse me, comes from the words you use. 38% of that message comes from your tone of voice. And then 55% of that message comes from your body language and facial expressions. And, the reason that was important to us as negotiators is that we didn't have that 55% because we were usually, if somebody's barricaded with a gun and stuff like that, we're not in the room with them. We're trying to negotiate them out. And so the only thing we had to go on, if I said something to that person, I didn't have the feedback of them going, kind of rolling their eyes because I couldn't see them. I didn't know. And so was I making a connection? Were they understanding what I was saying? And that's how, think about it. So the words, 7%, that's it. Whatever you say, the words really don't mean anything. And then your tone of voice, yeah, okay, it's fine. But where the message gets delivered is your body language and your facial expressions. Are you open? Are you honest? Are you, engaged? Are you locked into their eyes and things like that? The importance, I was brought up to say, you always look someone in the eye when you meet them. You shake their hand and look them in the eye. Well, if you don't do that, that's part of that facial expression. Oh, he's, how you doing, damn it? I'm looking away or I'm looking down. It's like, well, he doesn't care about me. I mean, you don't. It doesn't matter what I say. You've taken away from that is he's not even looking at me. So what? He didn't care about me. I could have just said, you know what? You just won $1 million. You're not paying attention to that. You're paying attention to my body language. So, it's amazing how this thing works to communicate much as we, run our mouths, and God knows I run mine enough. So, it really is, it's how you deliver the message much more than what the message you're delivering is.
Yeah. And from that, but as you said, you run your mouth a lot, but I know, knowing you, that you listen a lot too. So from that perspective, how much of this leaving a legacy is also too about listening to what is going on around you and delivering what is needed? Because a lot of times we're not listening. We're busy thinking of, when someone's talking, we're busy thinking of what we're going to say next. Haven't heard a word the other person says. We're taught in school, and I personally think, because they have they have debates in school. They teach people debating, and when you look at it, if you're going to be really honest, a debate is just two narcissists trying to belt the other person over the head with their opinion. There's no listening there at all. And so I'm wondering from that perspective, is that the training that we're having, and is part of this legacy? To be able to leave a legacy, you actually need to step back a bit and learn to listen what's going on around you. Is that part of where does that fit into that legacy you're talking about, leaving a legacy?
I think it does, because another thing that we learned as negotiators was the importance of listening to understand versus listening to respond. And we used to call that tactical empathy. So, say you had just committed a homicide and you're barricaded in an apartment. Tactical empathy is, help me understand why we're here. Help me understand what happened. Help me understand it. I may not necessarily agree with it. I mean, you just killed two people, so I'm not going to agree with that. But help me understand where you're coming from. And we like people that we think get us. We tend to cluster or to group together with people who are like-minded on us. And so, like I said, I may not agree with the fact that you just murdered two people, but I want to understand where you're coming from. And by doing that, that's building trust. That's building rapport with another individual. And then, again, because my job is to try to get you out safely. That's really my job as a negotiator. But in order to do that, I have to build trust. It's like any relationship that we have. The relationship you have with your wife, with your kids, with the people you work with. If they don't trust you, there's no way you're going to be successful in life. And the only way to trust is to build that, to earn it. It's not something that somebody just gives you. You have to earn it. And here I am as a negotiator trying to earn the trust of somebody that I just met in a life and death situation. So yes, listening to understand is so much more important than hurry up, Damien, say what you're going to say because I want to get my 2 cents in. I had no idea what you just said because I'm trying, to get you to shut up so that I can say what I want to say. And then, and just in conversation, you look at it and say, okay, Damien, I may agree with you. I may not agree with you. But help me to understand why you feel that way. Help me to understand why what position you're coming from. Oh, hey, Terry, when I was a kid, this happened. Oh, okay, I get. Now we're talking like human beings. And I think you and I have had this discussion. I mean, right now, pretty much in the world, we're just screaming at each other. And when you're screaming at me and I'm screaming at you, neither one of us understands what's going on.
Well, that's a different topic to do with our leaders and the role models out there. We'll get to that in a minute, no doubt. But I want to stay on this listening part. And you said listening to understand in negotiation, because it's a similar sort of thing. As you know, I have a program, Negotiation Magic, which is for high-end corporates. And we talk about sources of power. And we have a whole list of sources of power that you can bring to negotiating, which gives you power. And two of the key ones, and this is what we're talking about, is one, listening, and two, asking questions. Because you're gathering information. Information holds power because it gives you, the more information you have, the more you can do, which is what you're talking about. And so from that perspective of building this legacy, it's coming back to this whole point of, okay, how do we listen more? What do we need to do? Is that, from that perspective, because you said today we are screaming at each other, and that's the role models you've got. And I will, you guys set the standard in America in a lot of cases, and certainly as far as how to hold a debate that looks really shocking across the world. Your last presidential debate was a great example of that. So I've taken that and turned it into a sledge. But from that perspective with these role models, how do we now, we look at it and go, well, how do we create this, if we're building a legacy, to say, hey, what you really is? Because when we look at this power, there is immense power. I know from from your own experience, there is so much more power in being able to listen. And I'll redeem myself and give you a good example from America as well. Apparently, I wasn't there, but apparently when Barack Obama first met Putin, Putin talked for 55 minutes straight, and Barack Obama didn't say a word. And I look at that, and politics aside, just go, wow, how many people do you know that could sit there and listen, not say a word for 55? How many people could do it for 5 minutes, let alone 55 minutes? And that power that gives you, is that part of what we need to be educating people? Need to listen, because from there you're going to be able to understand, and then from there what to deliver, and then you're going to weave that into the hearts of people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think what you're describing is in some way what we used to call, it's called mirroring today. We called it parroting, where you as a negotiator, you're saying what you're saying,
Yeah.
and then I let you say, I let you finish, and then I repeat back to you, usually the last 3 to 4 words or some words
Mm.
that are important in what you just said.
Yeah.
So, whatever, what you just said.
Yeah. I've noticed from that perspective as well, doing that, you can actually encourage people will actually continue to talk and share more information. It's a
And that's
similar
what we
sort of
want.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly, by doing that, we don't
And for
like silence.
and for
But
guys, that's
there,
called
as you said,
foreplay for your wife.
yeah, but you said that there's power in that silence, just like Barack Obama did with Putin. There's power in not saying anything, because
Mm,
when I open my mouth and say something, now you know how I feel. Now you know where I stand. If I
mm,
don't say anything, you're guessing. Well,
yeah.
is he taking this in? Is he not? Is he agreeing? Is he not? So absolutely. And going back to what we were talking a minute ago, questioning, you want to ask questions. But we were even coached when we were negotiators the type of questions to ask. We would
Mm,
ask what and how questions,
mm,
and we tried to stay away from why questions, because if I
mhm.
say to you, Damien, why'd you do that?
You get
That
defensive.
sounds accusatory. That
Yeah.
sounds like, did I make a mistake today? As opposed to, well, what precipitated us to get here? Or
Mm,
how did this happen? Those are less threatening. Those are more willing. You're going to hear those, but well, yeah, I'll tell you how it is. As opposed to,
mm,
why did you do that? That's kind of like your parents saying, what, did you brush your teeth? Why not?
mm,
Oh, wait a minute, mom's upset with me, and that kind of thing. So even the types of questions you use to elicit response can
mm,
sometimes scare people or
yeah.
threaten them in some way.
Mm. So from that side of things, if we're talking about leaving a legacy, how much do we need to, I mean, we discussed this just briefly before, this understanding of your purpose. I mean, how important is that to know that? And I guess it's probably a rhetorical question for a lot of people, but let's go there for people that it may not be. But I mean, how do you leave, create, leave behind a legacy, um, if you're not clear about where you're going? Again, this is probably a rhetorical question, but
I, I think in a lot of ways you have to be a couple things. One, a lifelong learner, and
mm,
two, interested in people. You
mm,
have to say, and I mean a genuine interest. Again, I may not agree with you, but that doesn't make you a bad person. And I think that's the other issue we've had, certainly in politics, is that if you don't agree with me, then somehow you're bad. No, you just don't agree with me. You may be the
mm.
greatest guy in the world, but, well, wait a minute, you don't agree with me, so I can't have anything to. Why not? I mean, show me somebody who agrees with everybody on everything,
Well,
and I'll show
take
you an
anybody
idiot.
that follows a sport. They don't all agree on the same team.
Right.
And
Right.
they
And they don't even agree on the same players, or why are you playing that player? Well,
yeah,
you should be playing this one. I think he's better. Yeah, exactly.
and
I
they
mean,
still get
so
along and follow the sport.
exactly. So I think it's incredibly important to be a learner, to understand people, to dive into where they're understanding where they're coming from and why they're coming from, and just to be interested in
Mm,
people. And if you show an interest, you show a capacity, like what we were talking before, of loving people, of hey, look, here are
mm,
some things. I'm old, I'm dying. I want to give this to you. No strings
mm,
attached. I just want to empty myself out. I want to pour myself out of things that I've learned. Take
mm,
it, don't take it, use it, don't use it. It's up to you. But I'm just genuinely wanting to make you aware of these things in the hope that it makes you a better and more well rounded individual. And I
mm,
think if you do that, I mean, most of us aren't going to have statues erected to us or streets named after us or buildings named after. No, that's not the point. The
mm,
point is, did you make this? And the way I look at it, did you make this world a little bit better when you left it than it
mm.
was when you came into it?
I hear that statement a lot. Did you, wherever you go, leave it a little bit better than when you were than before you were there? From that side of things of understanding your purpose, because there's a lot of times people going, I don't know what my purpose is. And there's this whole thing, you've got to find your purpose, and people go on quests to find their purpose and things like that. And I'm being a little bit facetious here, but I can, because I've done it. So I can, I've been on those quests. Go, what is it? And, and then, when I look back, because, I am oldish, I'd say I'm a third of the way through my life and I'm 50. So I think with modern medicine, I should be able to make it to 150. That's my aim.
That's good.
That's
good to have high goals.
Exactly. Well, they're saying now, people, they're expecting life expectancies to be around the 110-ish area. And anyway, I have good genes, and my grandparents lived to almost 100. So anyway, sidetrack there. But from this side of things, it's in that process of my life, there's times where I've just said, I'm going to, and I put it down to, and facetiously put it down to, I'm a Leo rat if you're into star signs. So Western, I'm a Leo, and Eastern, I'm a rat. And so I look at it and go, oh, shiny thing, this shiny, and I jump over there, and I just go there without thinking about it. And sometimes I go, oh shit, that's fire, better get out. But is it a case of, from this purpose side of things, people, when leaving a legacy, rather than spending hours, days, weeks, sometimes going on a quest to try and years, going, oh, what is my purpose? If you're not sure, pick something and going, how can I help people? And just do that and find that. And should people be doing that?
Yeah, I recently read a book, and the title is blanking on me. It's by the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur magazine, Build for Tomorrow, I think it's called. His last name's Pfeiffer. And he talked about in his life that he started out after college as a newspaper reporter, small town, really wasn't going anywhere, and wanted to learn how to be an editor. So he went to a particular magazine and learned, kind of took a grunt level, low level job, learned how to do this kind of editing. And as soon as he knew that, he jumped ship and went to another job where he learned a different kind of editing. And then he went to a different. So it wasn't like, we like safety, we like security. This is a good job, but I've pretty much risen to the level, like, there's really nothing here left that I'm going to learn. So he was like, just go find something else to do. And I think we all have unique gifts and talents. Like I was talking to you before, if you put me in a job where I had to do math all day, I'd probably be miserable, because that's not what I feel my strength is. But what are your strengths? What are your likes? What are the things you enjoy? And go try those. But so many people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. So, and I always tell, especially young people when I talk to them, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. But then it's going to be too late to go back and do them. So try something. I mean, it's not like if I try this, I got to be locked into it for the rest of my life. No, try something, learn things, help other people along the way. And I think eventually, sometimes people just stumble into what they're supposed to do. But if you don't look for it, if you don't try things based on your unique gifts and talents, there's no way you're ever going to find your purpose on life.
Can we unpack two parts of that? One of the parts you talked about there is do your strengths. Because a lot of times, and I want to get to the part of challenging yourself later, so I want to separate these two out. But because a lot of times we as you say, not good at maths, and we can always delegate that. And it was a couple of years ago now, someone was talking about that, and this is where it stood out for me, was you don't so much try and worry about the things that you're not good at. What you do is you take the things you are really good at and get exceptional at that, because that's what's going to stand out. And because you've only got 24 hours in a day, time management is a misnomer. You can't manage time; it's constant. You can manage your effort, and that's where we talk about that in my program Max Time. We talk about how to manage effort. And from that, so you look at what you do really well, what you like, and then you look at being exceptional about that. Is that, part of that philosophy you were talking about when you said, focus on your strengths, do what you're really, really good at, and delegate the rest?
Yeah, I was listening. I was listening to a podcast, and I do not remember the man's name, but he was the founder of Wired magazine, and
Hmm.
he told the story when he started the magazine. He said, I was good at this. I wasn't good at raising money. I wasn't good at going to the banks and kind of stating my case on why you should fund this and stuff. He said, so I hired people that were good at that. And I
Mm.
focused on what I was good at, and like you just said, and got exceptional at it.
Mm.
And he said,
Mm.
exceptional to the point where, we're going to publish this issue in 2 days. Yeah, I don't like this article. We got to totally redo it. I don't like,
Mm.
we only got 2 days. Nope, sorry. I am obsessed with making this great, with making this
Mm.
perfect. And I'll let these guys deal with the banks and raising the money and, and the marketing and all that kind of stuff. This is what I'm good at. And this
Mm.
is what I love. And this is why I started the magazine. So I'm going to focus on that. So you're right. You can always outsource things that you don't understand or you're not good at. And by doing that, you give people who, hey, that's my expertise. Raising money is what I do. Now you let them go off and do their thing that helps you. And once again, you've given that person a job. You've given that person a purpose. They're excited. You're excited. Everybody wins.
I love that example because you're talking about there, and when you're exceptional at something, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that you notice things that other people aren't aware of. And I remember a story similar to what you were talking about. It was Steve Jobs, and apparently there was a shark photo that was supposed to go up, and they went through heaps, and he kept rejecting and kept rejecting it. And it finally, and everyone's looking, and they couldn't tell the difference with the one they selected. But what I think a lot of people miss, and maybe I couldn't tell it, wasn't there, so I don't know what the photos look like. But I know in my area of expertise, when I'm talking with people and people are responding, they don't understand. They completely miss key points, sometimes to their detriment. One client that cost themselves about $14 million because they didn't see what I saw. As much as I explained it to them and went through it and then through it and through it, they just couldn't see it. And they went down a path that cost them a lot of money. Is that, I mean, part of that, we need to recognize this expertise actually gives us an area where we can actually perform really, really well, like you said, the CEO of the Wired magazine?
Yeah. Yeah, the guy. I think so. He knew what he was good at.
Mm.
And he didn't try to be jack of all trades. I can do everything. No,
Yeah.
most of us can't. I mean, some of us can, but if we're smart, we understand what we're good at and what we lack, and we hire people that we like, we trust, that are committed to what we're trying to do, that have the same vision that we have. And we go to work and we try to make this thing whatever it is. I mean, look at companies. I mean, they're a group of people that have expertise in certain areas that come together to try to make a widget, or develop a product, or put out a service, or whatever it ends up being. So it's a group of people, and
Yeah.
it's you have to realize where you're lacking. We need a marketing team now, or we need a finance director, or we need an HR person, or whatever, or we need a legal team, whatever that is. I'm not a lawyer. I can't provide that service. Okay, I got to go find somebody that does that. Who's good at being a lawyer? I like this guy's good. This woman's good. I want to hire that person. I think that's what you have to do, and say, okay, this is what I'm good at, but you also have to know what you're not good at, and where you need to go outside and find people that are good at that.
Yeah. And from that perspective of finding your purpose, about being this focus, because I remember watching a video, Warren Buffett was talking, and he said, this is what you need to do for your life. You write out your goals, make a big list, put that in order of priority, and then put a line under the fifth goal, tear it off there, throw it out, and those 5 things are what you focus on. Is that where we need to get to? Do something really well and then move on, or do we, I mean, there is a bit of chopping and changing and learning, but from this, if you're going to excel at something, do we need to narrow it down and stay focused there?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, we need to niche, but when I was in the workforce, it was, you never want to get pigeonholed. So if you niche, that in essence is saying you're going to pigeonhole yourself. So I don't know what the answer to that is, or maybe it's maybe it's circular. Like, well, you don't want to be pigeonholed. Well,
It's
it'll
like
come
Mark
around.
Hamill being
Yeah, you do.
as he's been stuck as Luke Skywalker and can't do anything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but I do. We all have those things that we're good at. And
Mm,
we're talking, that's where you need to start.
mm,
Don't do something. I'm not good at that, or I'm not interested in it. Well, then don't do it. What are
mm,
you good at, or what are you interested in? And then go try things
mm,
and fail a lot, because
mm.
everybody sees the guy and the woman who's successful,
Yeah.
but they never see all the failures that are supporting that success. We all think that, oh man, that's an overnight success. No such thing. The
Yeah.
road to success is paved with failure.
Is that, I mean, part of that as well? I think we were talking about that just before, about this whole, needing to fail, being accepting of failure. We've talked about that before. Is that from that process as well of, when we're leaving a legacy, going, we're not, I love that you see them every now and you see the poster, and it's like, the planned journey, and it's a straight line. And then you go, the actual journey, and it's all over the shop. And it's like, that planned journey was not even a mirage. It was just a complete and utter, going down the rabbit hole fabrication, because it was never ever going to be like that. Do we need to start rechanging those metaphors and going, hey, there is going to be a bumpy road. That's just life. You're going to fail. Get up and keep going, and keep working towards that purpose.
Yeah, I think absolutely it has to be that way, because I see, at least here in the United States, I see so many people that'll start down the road to a goal or a dream or an ambition, and then they butt up against an impediment. Something
Mm,
gets in their way, and they can't get over it, around it, through it, whatever. And they quit, they give up. But
mm.
we just don't give up. We got to blame somebody. We got to blame our parents, or we got to blame our boss, or we got to blame our station. And like we do, we've got to blame somebody. And I look at those people, and it's like, most people will never get to where they want to be in life, because
Mm,
they won't stop whining and complaining about where they're at.
mm,
Very few people take personal responsibility for their own success and happiness. I mean, I remember when I got cancer, people were like, well, who do you blame? Like, what? Like, well, who do you blame? You got cancer. I mean, it's a bad thing. You got to blame somebody. I'm like, I don't blame anybody. And then
mm.
they find out I have a faithful life, and they're like, well, you must blame God. And I used to joke with them, I'm like, no, I don't think God got up on a Tuesday morning, checked his to-do list, and said, hey, Terry Tucker, cancer today. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. People, I don't want to take responsibility for my failure. I want to blame somebody because I wasn't successful.
Mm. Is it a case from that perspective? Because we are now moving into that fourth truth: is as long as you don't quit, you'll never be defeated. So that's where we've crossed that line by the sounds of it. With
Great
what we're
segue,
talking about.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I love it. I was listening, going, "You're a master. You're a master negotiator. How did you?" I'm not going to mess with you. But from that perspective, and I love this, you brought that up about excuses, because one of the things that I do with organizations, the clients that I work with, um, I implement a no excuse policy. So if you say you're going to do something, and we get together with meetings, and we have the continuous improvement meetings, which is a great program that I do with that, and bring that in there. And it makes massive change to the organization in a good way. And everyone, it does it really well. It's all in harmony. But from that perspective, one of the things that we do is whenever we have a meeting, everyone has a task to do. So it's kind of, when I say we'll have a meeting, we get together, and it's like, but everyone has a task that they have to do. They set their own tasks as well. It's not like you must do this. It's like, what can you get done by the next meeting? Are you sure you can get that done? And then we have the no excuse policy. So if you turn up next meeting and you haven't done it, you're not shamed or anything like that, but you can't give an excuse. All you can say is, I didn't do it. And it's amazing how much accountability that brought to every organization that I've implemented that in, where people got it done. Sometimes things come out of left field, and I had one where the thing cancelled 20 minutes before my task. It was all done. And then I can't remember what it was. Something happened, and it wasn't done anymore. It got undone. And I walked into the meeting, and I promptly said, I didn't do it. That's it. and set that as the standard. But it's amazing how when you don't, and it wasn't. I was doing this for companies, but I actually wasn't doing it for myself, which was really interesting. I realized that. But when I started doing it for myself, when I set my tasks, I use the Max Time program I talked to you about before. I use that daily, and I set a list of tasks that I'm going to do. I'm very careful about what I set in my day, because I can't say at the end of the day I didn't do it because I've got a no excuse policy for me. I mean, how do we? Is that, does that make that? I know from my life, does it make a difference? Does it from what you've seen, when someone stops making excuses and gets on with it, it makes a difference in their life?
Makes a huge difference. I was listening to a management consultant who works with nothing but CEOs, and
Mm,
the first thing he does when he goes in to talk to the CEOs is, okay, what are the problems you have? And the CEO will lay out the problems and things like that, and then he's like, what's your role in that problem? Well, my senior VP of market. Nope, 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 nope. I don't care about what your senior VP is doing. What's your role in that
mm,
problem? And again, it kind of,
mm.
even CEOs are like, I'm passing the buck. I'm making an excuse because my senior vice president of marketing didn't do this or didn't get. Nope, nope, nope. No, I'm not here talking to him or her. I'm talking to you. What's
Yeah.
your role in this? And getting people to own that and be like, okay, well, I hired the guy and the guy never gets anything done. Okay,
Mm,
well, that's your role in that. You made a bad choice in terms of putting that person or promoting that person or hiring that person, into that position. And I don't know why this story may or may not fit, but it just popped into my mind, so I'm going to tell it to you because I'm kind of like that, free thinking.
mm.
Um,
Yep.
this is,
I think I've got ADD too, but it's never proven. So I'll say.
well, you and I are both Leos, so we're both,
You saw a shiny thing. That's what it was.
yeah, I love shiny things. But so it was kind of interesting. I was interviewing for a marketing position, and I was interviewing with the senior vice president of marketing. And I went in and we talked for 90 minutes, an hour and a half. And he never asked me one thing about marketing. He asked me, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your parents. Tell me about, you played basketball in college. Tell me what was that. Tell me all this stuff. And I came out thinking, oh my God, that was the weirdest, dumbest, craziest interview I've ever had. I ended up taking the job. And I
Mm,
remember when I did, I went back to it and I'm like, what's the deal with your interviewing style? I don't get
mm.
it. You didn't ask me one thing
I get it.
about the job you were hiring me.
Yeah.
And he said, well, here's the deal. He said, I've got plenty of people that'll tell me whether you're good at marketing, whether you can do the job. He said, but what I look for is character. I
Mm,
want people of good character. And he
that's
said,
so.
I believe your character, for the most part, is formed in the first
Mm,
20 years of your life. So, from the
yeah.
time you're born till pretty much the time you graduate from college. He said, that's why I asked you all those questions. What was it like growing up? What was it like having knee surgery and overcoming that? I wanted somebody of good character. And I always say, character's caught, not taught. You're
Mm,
probably not going to read a book and say, okay, I got great character because I just read this book. No, you're going to watch Damien do something and be like, hey, I like the way he handled himself there. Or
mm.
I didn't like the way he handled himself there. And I'm going to, I don't want to do that. I want to do it a different way. And we don't talk about character. We don't talk about, things that are important in our life. I'm here for a marketing position. No, you're here to be part of this team.
Mm,
And does your character fit with this team? You may be great at marketing, but you're a jerk when it comes to being part of a team. I'll find somebody else.
mm.
So I think that's real important when you talk about, quitting and giving up and blaming. A lot of character, people don't blame. It's like, you know what? I'm going to get it done. If
Yeah.
if I tell you I'm going to do it, Terry Tucker's like, you know what? Terry said he'd get it done. He's going to get it done.
Mm. And that's interesting because you mentioned that, and from that perspective of having that character not to quit, because you have the forces background as well, police background, and same me. I was in the army, and it was interesting very early in the army, and I know it's the same in America. They have what's called the confidence course, and you cannot do that. You cannot succeed at that course if you're doing it by yourself. You have to work as a team. You have to, help other people. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. And that part of that, tests that character, creates that character. How do you? I mean, and a lot of times that's formed early on. But how do you, from that perspective, what do you need to do to tell yourself, "Hey, not to quit"? That I can get up and do it again. What's from your experience? What do people need to do to maintain that, especially when everything seems, um, like it's falling apart? How do we keep that focus?
I think a lot of it has to do kind of, with the first couple of truths we were talking about, is preparing yourself for those times because they're going to happen. We
Yeah.
know they're going to happen. Is doing those hard things every day, those
Mm,
small, hard things every day, so that
mm,
when the big things hit, it's like, okay,
mm,
I can handle this. I know I can because I've handled it every single day of my life that I've done a hard thing. I've gotten up earlier. I hate going to the dentist, but I made my dental appointment. Well, that's no big deal. It is if you hate the dentist. I mean, what's hard for me may not be hard for you. So, I mean, don't be comparing yourself, but find things that you don't want to do. I don't want to go to treatment today, but you know what? I'm going to go do it. I know I've got to do it. And it's sort of like that snowball. It starts out small, and if you keep rolling it downhill, I had a success. I did it today. I did it tomorrow. I
mm,
did it the next day. Oh, something big hit. You know what? I'm resilient now. I can
mm,
handle it. This is part of who I am because I've developed that because I feel I want to. I mean, so many
mm,
people are like, I don't care.
mm,
There's an entrepreneur here in the United States by the name of Ed Mylett. He talks about the four types of people in the world. And he
mhm,
says the first group are the unmotivated. And he said
mm,
that's the vast majority of people you'll run across. He said the
mm,
second group are the motivated. Pretty simple, pretty low brow. It's a life based simply on motivation. It works
mm,
for a lot of people. It's a way to be successful. He said third group he talks about are the inspirational people.
mm,
Inspiration coming from two words, in spirit. If you're an inspirational person,
mm,
you move people with your energy. And then the
mhm,
fourth group of people are the aspirational people. People aspire to be like you. Which
I
group?
thought you were going to say you lead with your ass, but sorry.
I like it.
That was a shiny thing.
I think about that sometimes myself. So it's like, yeah.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that about that having that inspiration. And I just wonder about with the people that are, not in that motivated category. When we talk, you mentioned about doing the hard things. And I wonder about that. Have we trained people to think things are harder than they actually are? Because and I look about, I'm going to give you credit for this again in your continent and country that you're in, because you deserve the credit for that. But I remember, you know, the first feature length animated movie, Snow White, when they're cleaning the house, she's there with all the animals. What is she singing? Whistle while you
While
work.
you work. Yeah.
And it was again in Mary Poppins, with every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun and snap the jobs again. Now, the question I have with that, and we talk about things being hard. Now, if you hate something and you're thinking about this sucks, I don't want to do it, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be hard. And we've all had this, haven't we? We've had a bad day. And no matter what happened, the sun could have been shining, everything's like that. But we're running our bad day strategy in our mind. And we've also had, I'm sure we've all had a good day. And no matter what happened, it was a good day. And that's where I'm wondering from that perspective, is it, we have to do the hard things, or is it a case we have to shift our thinking and going, okay, today, I'm going to enjoy this. And immediately we know now, you don't even have to do anything. You think a happy thought, your body starts producing dopamine and serotonin. So it is a case when we need to, for those unmotivated, that category of unmotivated, which is the vast majority, we need the education to go, hey, it's about how you're thinking about it. It's not that it's hard. You just need to change how your thought process is. And that's a simple choice that you can do in an instant if you want to. Is that what we need to be doing? Do you think that would make a difference for those unmotivated?
I don't think it would hurt. Again, I think it's how you grow up. It's what you see.
Mm,
If you don't, if you spend in the first 20 years of your life in an abusive family where, nobody cares about each other. I mean, I think that's why I feel so lucky. My mom and dad taught my brothers and I the importance of family, of loving each other, of caring for each other, of supporting each other, of being there for each other. And I think that just perpetuated, when we all had children and we all got married and things like that. And if you're somebody who, is always getting beaten and always told how lousy you are and stuff like that, oh my gosh, how hard that must be to change that dynamic. You can understand why people are mentally ill. You can understand why people, can't do things. They've equipped themselves with the necessary tools to be unable to do these things because of the way they were brought up. I mean, that's why it's so critical in the first 20 years to nurture kids, to have them see their resilience, that they're valuable, that they have unique gifts and talents, that they can be things in this world. Not everybody's going to be president. Not everybody wants to be president, but how you define success. And I'll give you this definition. This was from a basketball coach, one of the winningest coaches here in the United States. He defines success like this. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing that you did the best to become the best that you were capable of becoming. And I love that definition. You may be great at math. You'll get an A in math. I work really hard. I work my butt off. I get a C. Does that mean, I'm not successful? No, I got a C. I'm successful. Because I worked to get that C. Whereas if you got an A and you didn't work at it, are you really successful? I don't know.
Is that part of, because you mentioned that a couple of times about the focus on, rather than focusing on and comparing yourself to other people, because Einstein said if you compare a goldfish or you rank a goldfish on its ability to climb a tree, it's going to fail every time.
Every time.
But do we need to, from our own perspective, and be sharing more of that information in the world with people, that it's where you see yourself, not what, where you compare to others, because you can't compare. You cannot compare yourself to another person. They have completely different experiences, skill sets, all sorts of stuff. It's really, and that comes back to self-esteem, liking yourself. Is that part of this ability to not quit, going, hey, separating out? I like, again, I've got lots of programs, one called Fearless, and it's about having instant confidence. And we separate out into 3 categories. There's experience, which is, Michael Jordan throwing a basket over and over again. He has trained him, and from your negotiation skills, you can negotiate well, not because you were naturally talented at it. You might have had some natural experience, but you were trained to do that. So with the experience, that you can walk into that situation and do that well. That's experience. Whereas we separate out, then self-confidence is the ability to go, I'm going to give it a go. I might have beginner's suck at the start, but I'm going to keep getting up and trying again. And then the third component is self-esteem. And self-esteem is you like yourself regardless of what's happening in the world, or your ability to do something. Is that the separation we need to? I'm quite passionate about that. But do you think that would help people to have those separations, and that way not comparing themselves to other people, because their self-esteem is going, I like myself regardless.
Yeah, I think certainly I can only speak here in the United States, but we take our self-esteem and the word itself, self-esteem, the esteem comes from ourselves, but it doesn't. We take our self-esteem from what our friends say or what somebody says about us on social media. I didn't like the shirt that Damien was wearing today, or I don't like Damien's haircut. Sorry, that was a bad joke.
I know. I spent so much time on my hair this morning.
I know you did, and that's why I said that.
And I'm still having a bad hair day.
but that's just it. And then we internalize that. It's like, who are you to say that I'm bad, or I have bad self-esteem because my hair's bad today? I mean, we don't take it. We don't make self-esteem from ourselves. We take it from other people based on what they're saying, and I think that's terrible, and I think it's ridiculous. I'd get you taken off the air if I told you all the things I was called as a police officer, all the names I was called. None of those ever made me feel bad. None of those ever made me lose esteem or confidence because I didn't care what that person said. Most of the time they were in the back of my car on their way to jail. So it was like, you're sleeping on concrete tonight. I'm sleeping in my bed. Have a nice day. But you look at that, and I think if you have that confidence, if you have that self-esteem, you're willing to take risks. And I think that's one of the worst problems we have in the world today is, and I'm going to make a huge generalization and people are going to be really mad at me.
That's right.
Young people are soft. Young people like things are good, things are okay. I don't want to step outside that comfort zone. I don't want to try something new. I like this. Well, you're not going anywhere with that. I don't care. It's safe, and I like safety. And you don't grow when things are safe. You grow when you're trying to do things that you don't know how to do.
Is that part of that participation trophy that you get for showing up? And I think if you show up to do something, that's an effort. You've shown up. At least you've shown up. But this whole mentality that they were taking away the ability to fail, to lose, and learn from that. Do you think where that softness is coming from?
Oh, absolutely, and it's totally my generation. I mean, you can get a trophy for showing up, but when you get a job, if all you do is show up, you're going to get paid. No, they're not going to pay. You got to do something while you're there. My wife and I were talking about this when our daughter started playing basketball. It was a little kid, and it's a YMCA league, and little rec league. And at the end of the season, everybody sits around, and the coach pulls out this box and puts all these trophies up there. And it's like, they called the kids up one at a time, gave them a trophy. I took my daughter's trophy, like, oh, hell no, you are absolutely not getting this trophy. You didn't do anything. You showed up. That's all you did. And that's half the battle, sometimes people say, but then you have to do something. When you earn that trophy, when you work your butt off and are the champion, okay, I'll let you have that trophy. But showing up, you showed up because you got in the car with me and I drove you there. Where's my trophy?
That's a good point. I love that. I know we're running out of time, but to wind it up with those the 4 truths, do you want to put that in a nutshell for the audience?
I guess I'll tell you a story. I don't know if this will be a nutshell, but it's a story that I like to tell, and I think it kind of has importance. I had a nurse. All my stories are about nurses. I had a story. A nurse recently who asked me what it was like to have my foot amputated and to have my leg amputated, and I told her it certainly hasn't been easy. You were talking about takes 8,000 tries to learn to walk. Well, imagine when you're in your 60s and you lose a leg and you're trying to do that. I don't know how many times it's going to take me, to figure that out. But what I told her was cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And that's who I am. That's who you are, Damien. That's who everybody who's listening to us is. And we spend a lot of time on this. We spend a lot of time going to the gym and eating right, getting enough rest and reducing stress and all that. And I'm not telling you not to do that. That's very important. But what I am suggesting is maybe spend a little more time each day working on who you really are, working on your heart, working on your mind, and working on your soul. Because I think those 3 things incorporate the 4 truths.
Sage advice. I love that. That's awesome. Terry, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you again. I'd love to chat for longer, but I know you've got to go. Looking forward to catching up again sometime in the future. This has been wonderful putting the 4 truths together for the audience to listen to. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking with you, as always.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.